So I see that it is 8 p.m. GMT. So welcome everybody to our already regular webinar on vector symbolic architectures and hyperdimensional computing. Good to see familiar names amongst the participants. Well, I feel like I want to give a very or slightly longer introduction to today's topic of the webinar. And first of all, this is my particular pleasure to welcome Professor Alexander Gorban from University of Leicester in the UK, and mainly because he's one of my undergrad teachers. So this is really great to welcome you here. But also I want to say just a couple of words. I will not give a lengthy introduction, but here we used to talk about hyperdimensional representations of data, how to combine these representations using algebraic operations and make sense out of it. And I know many of or some of our participants, they experiment with implementing machine learning techniques using high dimensional representations. But today, I think today's talk is very important. So it's about fundamental properties of high dimensional spaces. So, and without any further delay, so I want to leave the floor to Professor Gorban. So please, I mute my microphone and the floor is yours. So don't forget to share your slides.
Thank you so much. It's my great pleasure to be here. I enjoy it. I found the topic you are working on very exciting and interesting. And thank you. I studied your site with your workshop at VSAONLINE, and I will study them deeper. Perhaps we have many possible points for interactions. But now let me go to today's talk. Geometry of high dimensional data and correction of II errors. Geometry of high dimensional data. Alexander Gorban, based on joint work with many people, Ivan Tyukin, Bogdan Grichuk, and all. I'm very grateful to Misha Gromov for long discussion about these topics. And so, this will be discussed slightly at the end. The plan of my talk. First of all, the talk will be not much formal. First of all, I will tell you about blessing of dimensionality from my point of view, a focal point of three ideas. High dimensional balls and spheres, analysis of that, foundations of statistical physics, and the framework of concentration of measure and geometric functional analysis. Then I will jump to errors of multidimensional data-driven AI. And discuss the post-classical data analysis introduced by David Danoha in 2000 in his Millennium Lecture. Then the problem of correction for artificial intelligence, corrections of errors. Then the mathematical curve, mathematical essence of my talk, stochastic separation theorems, a new measure concentration phenomenon. Then efficient correction of errors in high dimensions, the problem of technical depth, and the cherry on the top, adversarial examples, stealth attacks. So, concentration of the volume, because measure concentration theory was brilliantly illustrated by the theorem, the orange peel theorem. The multidimensional orange is concentrated in its peel. Volume of high dimensional ball is concentrated near its body. Not just study volume of the ball with radius r divided on volume of ball of radius 1 is r power n. For dimension 1, this ratio is just line. For 2 is parable. And you see for dimension 128, the ball is empty up to 0.95 of radius. And then static growth, and the most of the volume is concentrated at 0.99 of radius near the border. So this is the first theorem about the orange peel concentration. Then the second theorem, something very important, is a theorem of the orange slice theorem. The high dimensional ball is concentrated not only near the sphere, but near the equator, the small vicinity of equator. And the crucial question is of which equator? And the crucial answer is of each equator. And this is the orange slice theory. This is a simple exercise. And there, for example, two random unit vectors are always orthogonal for sure. Then between them is close to p by half with high probability. The particular case of this phenomenon is the theorem of the Maxwell distribution. What is Maxwell distribution? The particles in a somewhere are distributed uniformly on the sphere. Sum of squares of kinetic energy, sum of squares of velocity is fixed. And then they uniformly distributed on the sphere. Why uniformly is a special question, don't touch it today. And this projection on the one particle, on one coordinate, is Gaussian. And this Gaussian is high accuracy, with high dimension. Its Gaussian is just Maxwell distribution. The Maxwell distribution is a particular case of phase concentration theory. Then there is a great, before there were exercises. Now is a great result invented independently by Gibbs, Josiah Wheeler Gibbs in States, and Albert Einstein in Bern. And it's a bit, half a year or year later after Gibbs, but simultaneously independently, that basis of statistical physics. Microcanonical ensemble is sort of equidistribution with proper definition of measure across the surface of constant energy. And canonical distribution has a form constant multiplied E minus beta U. Canonical is much more convenient than multi-canonical. This is for the definition of entropy and many others. Canonical is very good for physics, but in some reasons, we can trust in microcanonical. Canonical is construction. And Gibbs proved that for good energies, for good functions, and for high dimension, for many particles, canonical and microcanonical are almost the same. And Einstein proved the same. And a good exercise, what does mean sufficiently good, and what does mean almost coincide? So for example, for smooth convex function is fine. For many other sorts of function, maybe not compulsory convex, but not very far from convexity and so on. What does mean almost coincide? It means that the it's not Gibbs, but much independently in probability that expectation averages of Lipschitz functions are the same, almost the same with high accuracy. This is ensemble equivalence. This means that everything is microcanonical. Or everything is canonical if you like canonical. Measure is concentrated near the thin shell. I like these faces. Maxwell, Boltzmann, Gibbs, Einstein. People who are these simple examples. Blessing of dimensionality was demonstrated in these examples. In high dimensions, many things become simpler. And there are two famous books, Statistical Mechanics by Gibbs, 1902, and concrete problems of functional analysis, where the notion of functional analysis was introduced by Paul Levy. Paul Levy was so excited by exercises with spheres, balls, that he, maybe a quote of his book is about this concentration. Very interesting, very exciting book. I don't know whether it's translated in English. I couldn't find, but I found translation into Russian. I can read French, but I prefer Russian. So, and this is a paper about blazing of dimensional mathematical foundations of the statistical physics of data with some sort of review and some new results as well. Open access, philosophical transactions. Then, following Levy and some brilliant theorem found by Millman, the great motion measure concentration theory was developed. Here are the main heroes: Levy, Millman, Talgrand, and Gromov. Of course, there are many more people, but the idea is that in high dimension, measure behaves very special. It's regular, it's sufficiently regular measure behaves very specially. For example, it is concentrated in a thin shell. It's concentrated in waste on these thin shells. They call waste concentration theorems. I talked about equator, but such theorems are true for many other distributions. Just the notion of waste is slightly more complicated, and so on. This theory is well developed. Even a special journal was created, Geometric Functional Analysis. But the background was very simple. There are simple observation of the geometry of high-dimensional balls and spheres, and there is a great prototype theorem about ensemble equivalence in statistical physics. And then many, for example, Dvoretsky theorem that in high dimensions, almost all sections of convex body are very close geometrically to a sphere. This Millman proved it, Dvoretsky theorem. Many others, many inequalities. Perhaps I will spend all my time if I will go too much deeper in this subject. And now let me jump to data-driven AI. I think that the main problems that will push us down to a new AI winter will be the problem of unexpected AI errors. This first killing a car has killed a pedestrian. Famous first. This is not bug. The report bug. It's not a bug. It's a decision of AI. Wrong decision. 2,000 people were not arrested, but somehow stopped for several hours because they have been recognized as criminal. They were compared to database. In one carnival, only 3 or 4, I don't remember exactly, were arrested with some reasons. Everybody else was 2,000. Police was shocked by this wrong work. And IBM Watson works much worse than the ordinary doctor with cancer treatment and diagnosis. This is a table of their errors. This is very expensive system. It makes % of errors in several case studies. Of course, people very often report that their system works better. They don't lie, but this depends on the procedure of testing. And this was testing in the operational conditions. And the Notting Hill Carnival was testing in operational conditions. And in operational conditions, we received different results. Can we correct errors by systematic retraining? No. Too huge task. To preserve skills, we must use the full collection, much resource, new error may appear, and the preservation of existing skills is not guaranteed. Why? Because the high-dimensional post-classical world. David Danocha formulated that post-classical world is the number of attributes grows faster than the number of examples. Here, observed in many cases, there's a number. I can say that when we worked with doctors come to a hospital, oh, we have big data, 28,000 numbers for each patient. How many patients? 100. We have no big data. It's a special case. And Danocha told that this is a normal case. And he told that this was his high-dimensional data analysis lecture. He tried to give a millennium lecture to present problems for new century. Okay, let me comment this. First of all, of course, classical statistical learning in post-classical world is useless. First of all the geometrical blessing and cursive dimensional effects appear when the number of attributes is big, and not the number of examples, but the number of the logarithm. If the number of points grows slower than exponent or 2 power number of attributes, then we will meet some blessing of cursive dimensionality effects very soon. I will demonstrate it. The post-classical world effects begin long before Danocha. On the other hand, data set, even if it is embedded in high-dimensional space, is not compulsory high-dimensional. It can be, for example, on a line. Therefore, we should say that we should measure dimensional data set should be much bigger than log n. This is definition of post-classical world. And there's some, there's some estimation. This how they could define dimensional. These are brains about an estimation of dimension review, and this is review about blessing of dimensionality, high dimensional brain, high dimensional. How to cope with non-classical world? First, try to revert to classic. Reduce dimensionality, just manifold learning, independent component analysis, principal graph and manifolds, autoencoders, and so on. During previous century, many methods were invented. The previous century was started from PCA, and at the end of 1980, autoencoders were invented. And at the beginning of 1990, principal graphs and manifolds and so on. This was technique for previous century. And data augmentation is simple approach. We explore data smearing, data by noise. Somehow these are just dual approaches because they work if there are some non-necessary dimensions. We can smear by data noise or reduce, just reduce by embed by on the manifold. But how to cope with this non-classical world? When return to classic is impossible. An external device, corrector of eyes, is needed. Should be simple, not change the skills, allow fast and non-iterative learning, and allow correction of new mistakes without destroying previous corrections. This is the scheme how it will work. This is the abstract, the artificial intelligence system that has some inputs, has some outputs, decisions, has some internal signals. This shouldn't be compulsory classifier, predictor, what you like. And this is corrector, which receives inputs, internal signals, outputs, and classify potential error, not error. If it's potential error, that it sends correction. This is external device. It does not change the system. And it appears that Fisher linear discriminant work very well in this classifier, to classify, to separate correct errors, correct examples from errors. Of course, from single, from cluster, but Fisher linear discriminant. You take the error, just divide. What does it mean? No, let us give the formal definition. Let the data will be centralized, zero mean, and whiten it. No, not to discuss too many inverse views, not to say too many words. Whiten and centralized data. A point is Fisher separable from a finite set with a threshold alpha if xy is less than alpha xx for all y. We just projection of vector x of the set y is closer to the origin. No, standard in the sense for whitening data. Of course, if it is not whitened, you should use Mahalanobis Skinner product. This same discriminants effectively separate mistakes. This is the first result. And the question is why? We proved it many experiments, and this is why it works. And this is a miracle of stochastic separation. Let us to be a bit more explicit. This is an old joke about a new topic. Stochastic separation theorems. I will give the only theorem for today. There are like 30 theorems, a huge paper in neural networks will be published in several days. It's not, maybe if you like to read, yes. But I will do just prototype theorem. Let us take first, probability of large deviation is small enough, and sets with small volume cannot have high probability. Let's formalize these two conditions. First of all, let's cut tails for this theorem. It's not compulsory, but let's cut it. Just n-dimensional unit ball. The probability distribution is in the support in the n-dimensional ball. And the density deviates from the uniform distribution in the ball, one divided on V. By this, not more than some geometric progression with some R and with some S. So it can deviate hugely, but not too fast. With this inequality, let Y is less than B power N, exponent but bounded, number of points. 2 alpha is bigger than B is bigger than 1. Alpha is the threshold. Then the probability that a random point is Fisher separable from a finite set is tends to 1 with difference decays in geometric progression. Exponentially approaches 1. This is the first theorem. If a probability deviation is small enough, here is a ball. If the set with small volume cannot have high probability, here deviation is bounded by geometric progression, is not too bad, not too restrictive, then this is probability as random point Fisher separate from a phi. I should say no ID condition of 1y, no probability. A random point and any finite set. It's very important that no IID about the set, just for a point. How to prove? Let's consider points that are not Fisher separable from X. So here is Y. Y is not Fisher separable from X if X does not belong to this ball. Y divided by alpha, then X. X is wet if it is inside this ball. The volume of this ball decays with dimension in geometric progression. If the number of this ball increases slower than this geometric progression, then the theorem is proved. That, no, and the probability is also multiplied Rm maximum density on this ball. That's all. this simple geometric reasoning. Just I can jump back, look of R rho M, jump back, jump forwards, volume of one excluding ball is Z. Then the probability of all the balls together goes to 0 exponentially. Now one comment. Extreme points. Sorry, Evgeny, may I ask you, how much time do I have more?
Maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes?
10, so much. I think maybe 5. Okay, thank you. You are very generous. Okay, 5 minutes will be enough.
You're welcome.
Okay, extreme points in high dimensions. Let me recall what is the extreme point. You can see a finite set. A point is extreme if it is linearly separable by a hyperplane from all other points, or if it is a vertex of the convex envelope. It's the same. Or it is extreme point of the convex envelope. It is the same. Of course, if you take a random set, there can be some extreme points here. That's this. Maybe some non-extreme points here. But in high dimension, with high probability, even for exponentially large sets, not too large, but exponential, all points are extreme ones with high probability. Moreover, each point is separable, Fisher separable, by this hyperplane from all other points. And this threshold is not expected to be small. For example, we can take 20%, 40%, will do like. Now let's take, for example, for 100 attributes and 100, and for M number of points less 207 million, the set of random points in an n-dimensional ball, random uniformity, is Fisher separable, each point from the rest, with probability more than 99%. It's just simple calculation. These are tables. First, this left table is how many points are guaranteed that the random point will be Fisher separable from the set. If alpha threshold is 0.8 or 20% count, R for this geometric progression deviation from the uniform distribution 0.5, and C is the constant just 1. You see, the ratio rho to rho uniform can be huge. We don't require anything like uniform distribution. And for 200, we guarantee Fisher separability for 10 power 13 points. It's more than enough forever. But this is for 1 point. The right table is about separability every point from each other. Of course, it's much smaller, significantly smaller sets, and slightly more restrictive condition, because we say about random set, in this here a point, a random set from any finite set. Here the random set, each point from all other. Here it is for IAD with the same restrictions on probability, also very impressive. And finally, if you forget about this condition, if we don't allow so huge deviation from uniform distribution, we allow here just to relax. The middle column is how much we relax the uniformity condition. Because in most estimation we meet, the people discuss uniformity. Now we know just no two strong lamps, to very, very high probability. The deviation may be huge, allowed to be huge. And then if we don't allow the deviation to be huge, you see, for 50 attributes. For alpha 0.6, no, not so much. For alpha 0.8, 17,000. For L is 100. For alpha 0, 80% cut. 2.9. This is for uniform distribution. This is, of course, much more impressive because we don't allow the distribution to deviate significantly. The various generalization. Of course, this is just a prototype theories. Arbitrary, of course, arbitrary log concave distributions. Convex combinations of fixed number of log concave distributions. Product distribution with bounded supports, and no idea assumptions. These are generalizations. Of course, the proofs, I apologize, the proofs are a bit more complex with many. We attract some results from convex geometry, from this geometric functional analysis, a bit more technical, but the idea is the same. No high probability of a very small volume set, and no very heavy tails. Just two conditions in various combinations. The first generation, kernel classifiers, curve, ensembles of correctors. You see, instead of one corrector, you can consider ensembles of correctors. By the way, in practical sense, it works much the best system. And cascade of correctors, not so good systems, but also possible. Then interiorization of knowledge is a typical problem. What means interiorization? When we correct many errors, we find many functionals for correction. Then the system becomes a bit more rigid, a bit less flexible, and correctors, when there are many correctors, can contradict each other. Therefore, we can go and interiorize, embed this knowledge into the system. And this is a great idea which taught Go players and so on. Just take the system with corrector as a supervisor for the system without character. Go and teach. Teach for huge number of examples, billions, synthetic examples, evaluated, labeled by this system with correctors are this red keep its corrector. This is generated data, labeling and reach. After some time, this training process will interiorize, embed the new knowledge into the system, and you can go ahead with further. And now the last result I would like to mention, this is examples. There are many examples of stealth attacks, how to destroy the work of artificial intelligence system, how to change the example, how to change the training process, so on. And the very funny result, the stealth attacks and artificial adversarial examples exist exactly when the correctors are possible. I don't like, again, to be formal. This published work I like, Tukin and High, my brilliant co-authors. What can be fixed can be broken. Exactly, existence of correctors and stochastic separation theorems allows us to create attacks on the system. This is, we cannot capture this attack because the validation set should be exponentially large to prevent this attack. This is like difficult bit, or like open access coding, the open key. It's possible to prevent this attack, but it's exponentially expensive. So now I just two references. I gave some. This is a review with some biological example as well, because in biology there are examples where single neurons work for episodic memory and for perception. There was even a term, single cell evolution. You can enjoy this term because it's in the framework of your direction. And there is a new collection. I think that we finalize this series. This phenomenon is fully described. They started to describe in neural networks in letters 4 years ago. Now this final paper, huge, and I don't think it's available in archive. It will be maybe in a week. It will be online in neural networks. This is our team. I'm very grateful to them. And thank you for listening. Questions, please.
Thank you, Alexander. So I applaud you for all the listeners. So I open the floor for questions, if any, please. Unmute yourself and speak up.
I can go through the back. Okay, Ross.
Yes, hello. Sorry, I may have missed something that was very obvious, but I was wondering if you could describe the internal structure of the corrector. So it's not from what I understood. I mean, you had the diagram very early on where you showed what the inputs to the corrector were. So I think it was one of the very early slides.
What's this one?
That'll do. I mean, so it says it's receiving inputs from the inputs to the AI system, the internal signals and the outputs. I mean, so this material is way outside my normal comfort zone. So it wasn't clear to me what was happening internally in the corrector for it to generate the correction to apply.
Okay, so corrector, the simplest corrector is just one neuron. Fisher discriminant, like perceptron or like SVM, if you like, but just one neuron with linear input and threshold activation function. And the input, so this corrector is the simplest one. And of
so
course,
sorry, does that mean that the is the corrector effectively a supervised learning machine? So does it have to know what is the correct answer?
No, this is,
Okay.
I should say, how it works. The system works, and suddenly there is diagnosis of error. Diagnosis of error comes from outside. The system cannot realize that it may, from nature, from user. Corrector is created to correct this and similar errors. For example, just for practical example, we work with video signals and pedestrians, recognition of pedestrians. And the normal system recognizes puppet with the mannequins or some monuments as people. And this immediately, oh, this is error. Say. Immediately it takes the inputs for this situation and separates this situation from all previous situations is marked as correct. After this corrector, it stops it is generalizable because it's not only, if you say the one mannequin is not a pedestrian, then it very easily separates all other of this type of, and then it separates, and then it works already without changing. So we say, oh, this is not false positive. And then when it recognizes the system approaches something that it recognizes the situation with mistake, it says stop false positive.
Okay.
This is just an example. Okay, did I answer your question?
It answers my question. I'll need to go away. I was just prior to asking the question, I was just doing a quick Google search. So you have some papers, I think, on archive addressing this issue. So I'll come up on that. But so it's identifying that this is an occasion of error, but not telling you what the content of the error is. Is that right?
No, of course not.
Okay.
No. This
Thank
is absolutely phenomenological.
Right.
Is this like neural networks? Is a new node? Is it so? You can just again, in abstract form, you should not say neural network and say everything. Machine learning. But let's imagine this is a huge neural network. This is a huge neural that works. And here we add an external neuron, additional neuron, that will correct some errors of the big network.
Yeah.
And the theorem is that this addition will work. The main miracle is that this addition works. And then, of course, it should not be compulsory. There are many generalizations. This is an idea. Let's say several neurons, kernel classifier, blah, 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 several not connected neurons, cascade, many other structures. But the main idea is simple, very simple device that separates errors. They occur, you are absolutely correct, they occur, that's not. And in some sense, now I go step to you. The top secret, the work is not yet done. Just submit for review and even not accepted. In some sense, these new neurons create new notions, like so-called grandmother cells in brain. Do you know that in brain there are cells that react on a specific image? And this is a big discovery and long way from 70s to now. They finally discovered that it really exists. The Jennifer Aniston cell, grandmother concept cell, there are many notions, but analogous concept cell. They react on a concept. And these characters create concepts. So suddenly, because this is benefit, additional benefit. Of course, we don't claim this always, but we just work with medical data, image analysis. It found that it really helps. Not for sure, but often.
Thank you very much for that. Very helpful.
More questions?
Yeah, maybe from my side. Alexander, thank you very much. Very, very, very fascinating. And I'm not sure whether I really understood everything. So maybe the question, okay, you made some distribution assumptions about the distributions. They should be sufficiently thin-tailed as far as I understood, or at least they should not be too heavy-tailed, right?
Yes.
Real world data sometimes have very strange properties. How constraining is your distribution assumption?
So from our experience, say, because the proper answer is, I don't know. For example, we asked the same question as Hinton asked. Just he told more ultimately ways told that there's no random distribution of data. We don't know. I fully agree. We don't know. Our aim was to prove that for very broad hypothesis about the distribution, this works. Therefore, when it works, you say, okay, are data much, so other heavy tails? I think in some sense, no infinitely far. There are no absolute miracles in the data set. So it's strange, but not infinitely strange. So therefore, this is citable. I think that the most general theorem is a convex envelope of several log concave distributions.
Okay.
This combination of several log concave distributions and even more, not about compulsory finite, and the number of these distributions grows with dimension slower than exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
This is enough. I think I don't know how far reality may run from this assumption. I don't expect it very far. Another kind of addition I did not give this about tails. If we consider cut tails or Gaussian tails, this everything is all estimates are exponential. But if we consider Poissonian tails exponential, not it can be. Then the estimates were exponent square root of dimension.
Okay, yeah.
This is the only thing, and therefore, if the log concave distribution are not uniform, maybe not uniformly log concave, it can degenerate into Poissonian tail. Then all estimates get the exponent square root of n.
Okay.
That is the addition. I must say, thank you. You allow me to extend this content of the talk.
Thank you very much for your answer.
Okay. Any more questions from the audience? I have one question on my own. When you were talking about adversarial attacks, so you put it in such a way that so in the cases where character exists, you can also break it. So my question is, so for a non-mathematician, can you give some number of steps how to recognize that that for a given problem a character exists?
So that is character exists when the tails are not too heavy and when there are not no very dense lumps in the distribution
Of data.
on data. Yes, on data. So and then this is in some sense where the adversarial attacks come from. Adversarial attacks come from the very interesting situation that the data set. Do you know adversarial? There's a famous example, and this table lay, baboon, and who it was some nice koala versus baboon. There are some non-informative for humans, non-informative attributes. Texture of food. If you change texture of food, for humans, it's very small change. But for learned system, because it's high dimensional, they use all the attributes as high dimensional, and sometimes they use the attributes that we don't consider as important. In machine learning, this situation is, I don't know why these people, because they maybe, I shouldn't criticize, but because there is a very well-known history, so-called Clever-Hans paradox. There was a horse, very clever horse, that answered very clever questions. But after all, it was not cheating. But because there was very good psychological contact between the person who worked with this horse and the horse just felt the psychological reaction and immediately did what the person, this man, liked from her. Therefore, it used important signals that people did not recognize. And people considered that the horse answered the attributes, the signals they gave the horse. Other signals. In high-dimensional space, there are many. In machine learning, there are many directions. And we can draw the system to another example, to false direction, use some attributes that people don't see. And this is the main phenomenon. It is possible, or this is, and the stealth attack, the insider attack, is similar thing. You can make the situation that the reaction of a specific example will be different. And this area of destroying cannot be captured if you have very high dimensional space of uniform or somehow good high dimensional distribution. You will never test this set. And this is exactly this result. I think that all the ideas with adversarial example that self attack is very simple and very well known for people. Just people meet in different contexts. Okay, no more question. I'm ready. I'm excited.
Well, we have time for maybe a few more questions, if any. If not, we always have mailing list, or I can forward your questions to Professor Gorban.
May I ask you? It's not
Yes.
standard, because I was so much impressed by your direction of research, and even hesitate a little bit because I don't know much about your direction, how you work with high dimensional data. I think that we can. Did you find in my talk some hints to your research?
Definitely. So I mean, that was my hope from the beginning. So well, I see Ross has switched on back his camera. So did you want to say something?
You carry on first, Evgeny. I was going
No,
to ask
I no, but yeah, but I mean, I think working with high dimensional representations, I mean, we tend to lack this fundamental knowledge of the geometry and the properties of high dimensions. So I'm sure, so it's not that I hope that I'm sure that this talk is very useful for our community, and maybe, I mean, useful by the fact that, I mean, we see all the references. So I mean, even if I don't grasp all the details, I can read it offline. So I read many of your papers, and I see definite. I mean, definitely, it is a very useful result that you produce in your group.
Thank you.
So, Ross.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question, I hope. And I'll just start off by saying, answering your question, Alexander, that yes, I've found this very, very interesting. It's suggested to me that it'd be worth looking at the use of a corrector in a system where essentially you're developing an autoencoder so that you can compare the regenerated output with the input to see the extent of error there, and then using the corrector as a means of correcting the underlying model that's doing the generation.
Oh, interesting.
But the question I wanted to ask, though, was actually an extension of Stefan's question, where you were talking about the effectively the impact of the assumptions about the tails and so on the performance of the system. I'm particularly interested in models, systems where the features which are being used as inputs to the model are effectively relational features. So taking an example of image processing, rather than say using each individual pixel as a feature effectively into the input to the model, you might be using pairs or triples or quadruples, whatever, of features. So that would seem to me to vastly expand the dimensionality of the feature space, and possibly also make it much more sparse. So I was just wondering whether that would have the technical effect of actually making it more likely to meet your assumptions.
Okay, so it's very nice idea. Use it in physics, because I connected to physics just by my personal history, because another my profession is statistical physics and kinetics. Therefore, I in between. In physics, it's very common operations in multi-particle distribution functions. And Bogolyubov, Born, Green, this is even Ivan Cheney. What I will do, first of all, we never work with pixels, with raw pixels. It's not very good. We usually work with pre-processed data and attributes, maybe with thousands, but not with millions. But in our estimates, even 50 attributes is large dimension. And for correctors, it's sufficient. 100 attributes is very good dimension for correctors. What about this? If I work with you and continue, first of all, what I will do, I say, oh, let's correct these triples. Then let us create dimensionality, standard simple dimensionality reduction. Is this multiple non-linear? This non-linear embedding, of course, because 3 points is very special. This sequence of points, this multiparticle function is very interesting for operators. Also, in this space, let us create even simple principal component analysis and select the major components up to maybe many, but not all. Delete minor, delete zeros. Maybe not just major like Kaiser rule, not the one, not big, remain, not the retain big, but delete zeros. And then we'll have very interesting space. For example, the standard benchmark face in the wild. They claim that they have dimension 128. I found the dimension 60 just by such a procedure. And we perhaps will find in our data set dimension not very high, but very interesting, even with this multi-pixel. And then we will work inside. Of course, we can go then to nonlinear function factor analysis like autoencoders you mentioned. I like your idea to correct autoencoders to create new senses, new kernels of sense. I will not steal it, but let us discuss. It's a testy idea. I will think about very testy idea, because just a side, I must say, we have many practical applications. We created processors for ARM. We work with security enterprises. This is medium size, not huge. We work with many applications, with medical imaging. So I did not include this into the talk because there's another subject. We will just ROC curves, do this, receive this, and nothing, no content. Therefore, I just say we work with that. But your idea to have is so close to physical way to Bogolyubov-Born, great names to be the number 10 in this chain. It will be good to join them, and a good idea. I like this.
Okay, thank you very much.
But please do it. I can automatically include some work just to forget. Don't please do this. Or let us do it together. I will be happy to do it together.
Thank you.
I would like to make a comment, and that's, you talked about the geometry of high dimensional spaces, but there's really also very rich algebra that can be worked on. I think that sort of relates to Ross' question. In other words, we can sort of take operations on the vectors and by that way, things that were not separable before, easily separable before, can become linearly separable. And once that goes far enough, then it's very hard to get a successful attack on something like that. You know, if something is very clearly linearly separable, you have to put a lot of data to sort of confuse it. So I'd say the algebra is just as important part of computing with high dimensional vectors as the geometry. And I don't know how much you have thought about
Sure.
what kinds of operations and what they do.
Sure. This is, of course, you are right. And this is, I like this idea of various operations. I did not go deep in this. What we did kernel operation, kernel trick and kernel transformation. In some sense, when you tell us that non-separable things can become separable, so this is also, kernel tricks is also for that. And we work as some theory, part of our theory for this kernel transformation, kernel in high dimension. But in general, we did not go that way yet. thank you for your comment. This is just this perspective. But so just my intuitive estimate, I don't think that the we can play. You play by transformation, we play by adversarial attack. And I think that will be typical shield and sword competition. And I think that in high dimension will approach that to avoid attack, you will approach lamp structure and heavy tails. This is just a part of the theory. I'm not sure because we don't include this nonlinear transformation you talked about. It's not, we are in narrow world, but this is my hypothesis. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I hope, Alexander, that your talk would raise great awareness in our community. So, and thank you for all the links that you provided. And once again, thank you for the great talk. And thank you for coming and being with us. So I think it's time to conclude our webinar. So we see each other in 2 weeks from now. So the program is already on the web for the next few webinars to come. So at this point, I say goodbye to everybody. And once again, thank you, Alexander.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I enjoy our
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
But this is the most pleasant lecture.
Bye.
Bye-bye.